Welcome to SS1 Fine Art, Term 2. This lesson focuses on photography, specifically exposure and composition, the two foundational technical and artistic skills that determine the quality of any photograph. In today's world, where everyone has a camera in their pocket through their smartphone, understanding photography principles helps you create images with intention and artistry rather than by accident. Photography is the art, science, and practice of creating durable images by recording light using a camera. The word photography comes from the Greek words phos, meaning light, and graph, meaning writing. Photography literally means writing with light. Photography was invented in the 19th century. The daguerreotype, created by Louis Daguerre in France in 1839, was the first practical photographic process. Later, the development of film photography allowed multiple images to be captured on a roll of photosensitive film. In the digital age, cameras capture images using electronic sensors. Photography serves many functions in modern society: journalism and news documentation, fine art expression, advertising and commercial photography, portrait and wedding photography, scientific and medical imaging, and everyday personal documentation. In Nigeria, photography is a significant profession. Nigerian photographers like Kelechi Amodiobi, George Osodi, and Andrew Esibo have gained international recognition for their fine art and documentary work depicting Nigerian life, culture, and identity. Exposure refers to the amount of light that reaches the camera sensor or film. The correct exposure is what makes a photograph look bright enough to show detail in both shadows and highlights without being too dark or too bright. Underexposed photographs look too dark. Overexposed photographs look washed out and too bright. The exposure triangle consists of three settings that together control how much light the sensor receives. The first is aperture, measured in f-numbers or f-stops. The aperture is the opening in the lens. A wide aperture, represented by a small f-number like f/1.8 or f/2.8, lets in a large amount of light. A narrow aperture, represented by a large f-number like f/11 or f/16, lets in less light. Aperture also controls depth of field, the range of distances that appear sharp in the image. A wide aperture creates shallow depth of field, blurring the background and isolating the subject. Portrait photographers use wide apertures to create the creamy blurred background seen in professional portraits. A narrow aperture gives deep depth of field, keeping everything from foreground to background sharp, preferred in landscape photography. The second element is shutter speed, how long the camera sensor is exposed to light. Fast shutter speeds like 1/1000 th of a second freeze motion. Slow shutter speeds like 1/30 th of a second or longer blur motion. Action and sports photographers use fast shutter speeds. Photographers shooting at night or creating light trail effects use slow shutter speeds. The third element is ISO, the sensitivity of the camera sensor to light. Low ISO values like ISO 100 produce clean, low-noise images in good light. High ISO values like ISO 3200 allow shooting in dim light but introduce grain or digital noise into the image. Understanding how these three settings work together allows the photographer to achieve correct exposure while also making creative choices about depth of field and motion. Composition is the arrangement of visual elements within the frame of a photograph. Good composition creates images that are visually engaging and communicate the intended message clearly. Several key composition principles guide photographers. The rule of thirds is the most fundamental composition guideline. Imagine the frame divided into a 3x3 grid. The points where the grid lines intersect are called power points. Placing your subject on one of these power points, rather than in the dead center of the frame, creates a more dynamic and engaging image. Leading lines use natural or man-made lines in the scene to guide the viewer's eye toward the main subject. Roads, rivers, fences, paths, and architectural features can all serve as leading lines. Framing means using elements within the scene to create a natural frame around your subject, a doorway, tree branches, or an archway. This draws attention to the subject and adds depth. Symmetry and patterns can create striking images when deliberately composed. Depth and layers means including a foreground, middle ground, and background to give the image three-dimensional depth. Negative space means deliberately including empty space around the subject to create a sense of isolation, simplicity, or scale. Perspective and viewpoint, the angle from which you photograph your subject, dramatically changes the impact of the image. Shooting from low down makes subjects look powerful. Shooting from above can create unique compositions. Today we learn that photography is the art of writing with light. Exposure is controlled by the aperture, which controls the amount of light and depth of field, shutter speed, which controls motion, and ISO, which controls sensor sensitivity. Good composition uses the rule of thirds, leading lines, natural framing, symmetry, depth, negative space, and considered viewpoint. For your practical exercise, use your smartphone to photograph any scene using the rule of thirds, turn on the grid overlay in your camera settings, and photograph the same scene twice, once with the subject centered and once with it placed on a PowerPoint. Compare the results.